welcome to Moral Side of the News, our weekly discussion of today's top stories from a moral, ethical, and religious perspective. I'm Sean Kalin with the WHAS Crusade for Children, and I'm joined today, as always, by a distinguished panel of local religious leaders. Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition, Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary and St. William Catholic Churches, Reverend Michelle Pennix, Lighthouse Christian Church, Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School, and Reverend Leigh Maynard, Christ Church United Methodist Church. We begin this week with a back-to-school story. It's that time of year. The controversial new policy announced by a major university. Soon, some students won't have to worry about grades.
One of the country's largest public universities will soon be doing away with letter grades for some freshmen to protect their mental health.
They need time to figure things out.
Beginning next fall, instead of getting an A, B, C, or D, some first-semester freshmen at the University of Michigan will get only a pass or no credit, and neither designation will count toward their GPA. The university says this will allow students to explore a subject that may not come easily to them, or take a course in a new field without the fear that a low grade may have long-term consequences.
I showed up wanting to study chemical engineering. I bombed all of my first-year classes and soon discovered that chemical engineering was not for me.
The school says the goal is to help students start strong and curb the mental health crisis unfolding among college-aged individuals. Critics say the university is coddling students. One education policy expert saying swaddling college students does not actually improve their mental health. It creates entitlement. Others disagree.
That kind of sink or swim argument about higher education simply doesn't hold water. Higher education should be a pathway for upward mobility for all who enter through this university's doors.
So panel, is this an example of compassion and giving young people room to adjust, or does shielding students from the performance risk lowering standards and failing to prepare them for the real world? How should we balance compassion with accountability? Michelle, you're an educator and a former leader in the education system.
That's right. A topic I have a lot of interest in because as a former member of JCPS, I know that's one of the things that we debated very often and is still being debated about what grades should look like, what should achievement look like, and how should that be measured. And usually those students who have the most difficult backgrounds are the ones that bear the weight of those lower grades. We know that right now about 30% of students in college flunk out after their first semester. They don't return for their second semester. And there are a lot of different reasons for that. But the question that kind of holds true for me about the University of Michigan and what they're doing is, what have we not done to prepare students for college in the first place? It starts way before college. You know, I was thinking about this topic with my husband, who's long had a issue with youth sports and giving everybody a participation trophy. And I think we see the ramifications of that as we go. You know, failure and falling down and mistakes are where we grow from. And so I think it's important that we look at that, but also that we balance. And I'm wondering what conditions are in place at the University of Michigan, but MIT has the same policy. What conditions are there to support students who do struggle, who do find it difficult to know their pathway, and who see opting out of college as their only relief? So there are a lot of different ways to look at it, but I lean more toward the side of this being a good thing, but I also want to look at how we got here and how we can provide additional support for students before they arrive on college campuses so that it's not as dangerous to their mental health.
I agree with Michelle. I think I lean toward it being a good thing for a variety of reasons. It's not a catch-all criteria for every school. Of course, University of Michigan is a very distinguished university. It's not some garden variety, fly-by-night institution. So for the University of Michigan to consider this automatically, in my view, would give it some weight and credibility. I think the object, like when God tests us in the Bible, he tests us not for us to fail. He tests us to help us to be improved and to make us better. So I think in the freshman year, as you mentioned, Michelle, many students drop out. This could be a way to help them on the entrance ramp, so to speak, and the first semester especially, naturally wouldn't apply all the way through, but it could be of great benefit to achieve, to help the students and to help the overall goals and objectives of the university. So I surely don't want a pass or fail for a medical student who is applying for his medical degree to be a pass or fail. Some things lend themselves to a pass or fail. It's kind of like this comedian I heard. He said he was happy he passed his COVID test. He got a 65 on it. I don't know if I want a 65 on a COVID test. I want to be pass or fail. So some things lend themselves to a pass or fail criteria. Some do not. But I think I lean again, agree with Michelle, that because it's a University of Michigan, it's a very distinguished university because the rationale behind it appears to be noble in its intent. I think it could be of great benefit for the university and the students and in the very early stages of their entrance into college, to the college experience.
I think everybody has a valid point, but I want to put some other things on the table. First of all, when we have to look at the generation of students coming into colleges and universities now. They're the COVID generation. They have been traumatized at various points in their life, intellectually and academically. And they need...
And socially, too.
And, oh, yes. And they need to be cared for. And I applaud what Michigan is doing. But let me tell you, I'm thinking back 60 years ago. 60 years ago this month when I started college. And I didn't have any of the study skills that I needed. I could write a term paper using Campbell's thesis form, but I had never taken a final exam, ever. And that for me was a trauma. And I think together with the pass or no credit thing, still these students need to be monitored and helped and guided into what it's like to be in a college environment, what it's like to be, in many cases, away from home for the very first time, and how to budget time and accomplish what needs to be accomplished, whether it's a pass, no credit, or grades.
I'm a little interested in understanding how their work would be monitored and responded to so that there are markers of growth and development, and that that there's a clear understanding of learning that's taking place, because I don't know how students would necessarily know that they're meeting those markers and capable of stepping forward. So I'm not sure how I feel about that one necessarily, especially coming from high school, which for a great number of students is such a high stakes environment. For my own kids, they had to understand from the day that they walked in to their first day of freshman classes in high school that the fulfillment of their dreams was largely going to depend on their learning and performance, because their pathway forward was going to be reliant on Keys money, for instance, and the standardized testing scores that I absolutely despise, but that's a conversation for me to rant and rave about on another day.
We can have that anytime. I'd love to have that.
Oh, I am happy to throw down on that particular topic. But there was this constant concern about would the scholarships happen and those kinds of things. And then to step out for the first time and then into an environment that isn't monitored, that isn't reinforcing growth and learning, that's a little concerning for me.
Well, one of the things that the information that has come out about it is the professors are still keeping track of all of the students' actual grades and giving feedback based on that for scholarships, for advancement, for student interest. They're just not keeping it as a part of their transcript. So the professors know there is still a conversation with students about how they're doing, but ultimately it's a pass or fail.
Okay. Well, it seems to me that if it's a, I mean, first of all, it's an experiment. So we'll see.
Yeah.
You know, 2
like
3 years
democracy
out.
was an experiment.
Well,
Keep
2 or
talking.
3 years from now, they'll know better if it's working or not. They won't know this year. But 2 or 3 years from now, when these first-year students get to be juniors and seniors, they'll know much better. But I also, one of the things that I would always try to weigh is this a transferable experience? If it's so good for these first-year college students, why wouldn't it be great for first graders? Why wouldn't it be great for first year in high school? Why wouldn't it be great for every grade? And I think there's a value to knowing that you have achieved a certain level. And again, it's a flat. Yes, you passed, or you didn't. So you get credit, you don't get credit. There is a measurement. But lots of reasons why there'd be concern about the standardized testing process and how those are arranged and what the information they're seeking and trying to demonstrate by that. There's a lot of concern about that, but why bother to test? I mean, if you're basically just going to say you got a bottom level, you know, then let's just let everybody in college who can pay for it. You know, there's no reason to be concerned about what you're doing in high school as long as your parents can pay the tuition, because you're welcome here, whatever you do.
Well,
Go ahead. I was just going to say it is, but this is a specialized application. This is not a uniform, as I understand it, uniform approach criteria for all evaluating student progress. I think it's much like when many students, and who I've done in the past too, audit a class. I've audited several college level, graduate level classes, just for the information, for the experience. I didn't want to get the grade, so you have, it's kind of like that, but not exactly. But it gives them, as he said, the benefit of having the experience of going through the class, and if they do not perform well, it does not work against their overall grade point average towards the degree of their final selection. So it has an advantage, more advantages than disadvantages. It's not going to be universal. It has a unique, specific, limited application to it. And I think in that regard, it could be of great benefit.
Well, I know it's not supposed to be, but I'm raising the question. If it's so well planned out and such a good benefit, why don't we expand it across the board?
Well, you know, that's one of the things that I think parts of education are grappling with across the country right now. Actually, in kindergarten, as you enter school, now there is a ready for kindergarten assessment or not ready, which again falls back on parents to say, have you done what's necessary to get them? But again, I remember being in 9th grade as a freshman in high school, the worst semester of my entire life, and it being almost impossible to make that failure up the further you go along. So I think it's a warranted investment to see what will happen. I think it will be 2 or 3 years before we understand the full context, but we'll know in January whether or not more students stayed because they didn't flunk out their freshman year of college.
Or will we see 30 or 35% failing out at the end of their freshman year or
with
the
no
first semester of their sophomore year? I mean, it's...
Remains to be seen.
That's right. That's what I said. Time will tell.
Yes.
I mean, I support the experiment. I wasn't talking against the experiment, but those are questions I had. And again, the only way to be measured is getting down the road.
I wonder, too, if there's a possibility of creating apathy in the student. If they're not doing well with a particular topic, then why not just let it go? Because technically, I can't lose. It's not going to, you know, so that there might be a possibility of backing off of effort maybe, and especially if there's another class or course that's supposed to come after a particular one. And then the groundwork and the basis for that has been lost.
That's true. All first-year classes are foundational.
Yes.
Everyone's building is intro to this, intro to that, intro to this. You know.
Well, and particularly like in the area of language arts, you know, if you lose that very vital piece of communication, it's crippling for the rest of the college career as a result.
Yeah. Well, and some often in colleges, as I mentioned earlier, students, especially of disadvantaged populations, are actually placed in remedial courses, aren't even actually able to take college credit courses. And so now this gives them an opportunity to experience real work level professors and classes, and to see with some support whether or not they can cut it, as opposed to being spending time and money on classes that don't count at all.
And I see that they're going to lose in this respect. Let's say they take a course or courses their first semester freshman year, and they get no credit for it. Then they're behind on their schedule of when they're going to graduate from college. And unlike high school, it's going to cost them or their families more money to get them through, if indeed they have the resources to get them through.
Well, definitely keep an eye on it, because it's for next year. Michigan has announced it this fall, hoping, I think, to get more applicants and admissions.
More income.
Come to Michigan. You don't get graded for it.
I'll sign up now.
Yeah. So it goes into place next fall of 2027, and we'll keep an eye on it. I'm sure it'll be back in the news. Let's move now to the return to the growing backlash of flock cameras.
This morning, a new warning about vandals obstructing, damaging, or stealing cameras made by Flock Safety that can tell when a car crosses a certain intersection. Someone smeared a glue-like substance on this one in Edina, Minnesota. In nearby Plymouth, Minnesota, a camera was destroyed.
The camera was found just broken into pieces, sitting at the base of the pole that it was mounted to.
In North Carolina, police said these are the vandals who cut through a metal pole to steal a camera in Craven County. A law enforcement bulletin reviewed by ABC News is warning of a week-long protest later this month, encouraging people to disable the cameras and cover their license plates to fight back against what critics call an invasion of privacy. This guy posts videos of himself on social media covering cameras with tape and stickers. There are 120,000 flock cameras deployed around the country to read license plates and store the data for police to search.
A lot of this is done for abductions, but also counterterrorism things matters as well. Put them on bridges, put them on highways, and you can find someone committing a crime.
Flock says that's exactly what they do.
We helped in over 1 million crimes last year, over 10,000 missing people.
But just this week, this former police officer in North Carolina was arrested for allegedly using Flock cameras more than 30 times to track her boyfriend's ex-wife.
At least twice, she accessed these cameras while she was off duty.
In Ohio, 2 officers resigning after they were accused of repeatedly searching the same license plates without a legitimate reason. And after this ad aired during the Super Bowl to promote a new feature to find lost dogs,
search party from Ring uses AI to help families find lost dogs.
A different camera system, Ring, severed its partnership with Flock. Why are people so concerned with your technology?
I think the conversation is worth having, right? We believe in a future where public safety and privacy can coexist. The debate is real, but we shouldn't forget that safety is also a fundamental right.
So panel, where do we draw the line, the moral line, between protecting the public and respecting individual privacy?
I believe in the right to protest. I don't believe in the right to commit wanton vandalism on public property.
Yeah, and then this issue of privacy, well, if you have a license plate, that's public. Now, if someone has access to recording the information, it's another story, but if you've got a license plate on a vehicle driving it in public, that's public information. So they just happen to be able to capture that public information with a camera, but it's there for the public, law officials to see it, not conceal it. So I don't see it as much as a privacy issue other than the abuse of those that have access to the cameras, and that's the problem there. but I don't see it as a general problem of invasion of privacy. When I was in China a few years ago, they got cameras everywhere. And it's one of the most tranquil countries I've ever been to, probably for that reason. You go and just as quiet on subways and in public, you don't see the confusion you normally see in cities here. And it's probably because there's cameras of surveillance everywhere you go. So that could be a good thing. But I see it I'm glad that the technology exists, because so many occurrences of violence happen without some detection. I think we've been able to uncover a lot of crimes because it was captured on a camera. We had a situation in our neighborhood many years ago. Someone came by and had a drive-by situation. We were only able to track it down because some of the neighbors had a camera on their house. But if you had cameras like that, you could catch the license plate and so forth. You could really uncover a lot of crimes using this technology. So I think I'm glad they have the technology. I'm against, of course, the abuse of it, like someone indicated in the report here. But I think that in general, it could be some good, beneficial technology for the safety of the general community.
Well, one of the things that concerns me most about the use of flock cameras is who owns the information. And that is a very scary thought for me. I was reflecting on, and I'm asking you all to do the same thing. If you've ever had an opportunity to be at a party or an event and you just got to let loose, you got to be yourself, you weren't worried about who was there, you were just there socializing with your friends, having a good time, and somebody brings out a cell phone camera and begins recording. And they've got you being your most relaxed. Even if you weren't doing anything wrong, you know how that can be viewed by your congregants, by friends, by other people. And to know that that person had that information on you, it locked in their personal phone, and what they choose to do with that after the event is, in a much smaller sense, how I look at flock cameras. They have this information. What will they do with this information? Because it is in public and because they're gaining this information, do they then 2 years down the line get to use this information for their own benefits? You know, I think we're all a part of the cell phone scams now, where we're getting calls about our applying for a loan and tax credits all the time. And that comes from someone having our information and deciding what they wanted to do with it, whether it's sell it or use it for their own purposes. So I think that's something that we definitely have to keep in mind, because it's becoming more and more, we're being surveyed all the time. I don't think this is new. I remember the first time going across the bridge to Jeffersonville after the tolls and getting my first ticket, and they had a picture of my car, and I remember thinking, how did they do that? How did they know? And what else have they been able to see? You know, my car is my private space. So I think there's a lot of things that have to be considered. And then ultimately, the biggest concern, as I said, is what do you get to do with that information?
I have 2 points. One is affirming how this can work for the good. There was a very, very public story a couple of years ago about a kidnapping, where the kidnapper took this mother and child to Citizens Fidelity Bank and then fled from there after he got her forced. It was a kidnapping, not a gun. That Citizens Fidelity Bank is right across the street from St. Margaret Mary's Church. When he fled across Shelbyville Road. The police and the cameras there knew that he had come onto our property, but they didn't know exactly how to visual. We were able, at that very time, within like 15, 20 minutes, because we were on lockdown, we checked our cameras, we spotted him on our property, and we spotted exactly where he left our property. Nobody would have been outside observing because we were in lockdown. The police came and looked at it real quick. In a very short time, they captured him off our property, down the neighborhood, but they knew where to start looking. They need to start looking the entire St. Matthews area. They knew exactly where to go. It's because we had these cameras up, and we were able to get that information to them, and they got the information from us immediately. But to the other point you're raising there, I was at a workshop recently about church and relating to young adults, and talking about how, in our past, a way to get young adults on your church property was have a dance. Go on dance, dance. They will not come to a dance anymore. They will not, because they don't trust their best friends. Because if you go there and you start dancing, you act a little silly, they're taping and they're going to post it. And you're the one's going to be embarrassed. It's going to be up there for the rest of your life. They don't trust their best friends, even, to be able to use judiciously their videos and what they're going to post. So there's other ways you get them on campus. We talked about that. But it used to be something like a dance. Well, that never will happen again. Because, again,
privacy doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
And control doesn't really exist. With the flock cameras, if that is operated by a responsible governmental entity, I think the case that you gave about the kidnapping makes all the sense in the world. It's a good thing. If the flock cameras are operated by a private enterprise that is paid by the governmental entity, and the private enterprise, in addition to the governmental entity, has access and control to that data, then that's pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
Because I'm really nervous about the motives of many private enterprises.
Quickly to Leanne, just we're running out of time. We have about a minute left.
I was just going to say that I think it's really interesting that Ring severed their relationship with Flock. And just, there's a show on television that my husband and I have picked up. It streams on something, I don't even know what, but I think it's called Neighbors. And it is mishaps that people have gotten themselves into that have been caught on folks' Ring cameras on their homes. And so that's the gist of the show. And I walk in our neighborhood a good little bit. And I found myself now looking to see where the cameras are and being shocked by how many there are, considering the fact that I'm from, I hail from the 1900s, back when we remember what it was to just simply exist and not constantly have people trying to get our attention or monetize our attention or know exactly where we were, what we liked, what we did, all those things.
Again, there's America's Funniest Home Videos.
Yeah.
That's a TV show that does that.
But there's always an eye in the sky.
Yes.
There's always an eye in the sky.
Very good conversation. Thank you for a great show this week. Thank you to our panel, Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition, Father Bill Hammer, St. Margaret Mary and St. William Catholic Churches, Reverend Michelle Pennix, Lighthouse Christian Church, Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School, and Reverend Leanne Maynard, Christ Church United Methodist Church. Thank you for joining us this week. Come back next week for an all-new Moral Side of the News.